Now, prompt engineering is perhaps the most important skill that you should learn in 2020. Now, prompt engineering is perhaps the most important skill that you should learn in 2025. And inside this prompt engineering masterclass, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to become pro at writing prompts. To do that, I'm first going to start by setting the scene by going over some basics, and then I'm going to give you a prompting framework that you can follow for writing almost every single prompt. And then I'm going to tell you some best practices. And finally, I'm going to teach you how you can become a pro if you want to take it one step further. And so with that being said, let's get right into it. So if you guys are watching this video, I assume you guys already know what a prompt is, but just in case you don't know what a prompt is just the input message you send over to the large language model. So let's say if you're talking to ChatGPT, you're always going to have this box where you can write something inside it and send that message over to ChatGPT. The message that you actually send over, or the input message, is what we call a prompt. And then the large language model will get that prompt or that input and it will give you an output. So from now on, every time we say prompt, just think the input message you provide the large language model. So it's important to know how large language models actually work. Fundamentally, large language models are just probabilistic models that continuously predict the next word. So to put this in perspective for you, if a large language model wanted to write the sentence binge drinking may not necessarily kill or even damage brain cells, it doesn't just output this entire sentence in one go. What it actually does is that it continuously predicts the next word until it outputs that sentence. So basically, it first says binge, and then it says, okay, well, the first word is binge. What's the next most likely word? Drinking. Cool. So now it's got binge drinking. And then it says, okay, well, binge drinking, what's the next most likely word? May. Binge drinking may, what's the next most likely word? Not. Binge drinking may not, what's the next most likely word? Necessarily. So just continues by finding the next most likely word and puts it together to eventually form sentences and talk how a human would talk. But if you guys want to get technical, the large language model doesn't actually output words. What it does is it outputs tokens, or it predicts tokens. Now, for the sake of our discussion, you guys can just think of a token as the same as a word, but a token is generally a portion of a word. So on average, a token is 3/4 of a word. But realistically, you can always just think of tokens as words. And so just to touch on this further, as I said, what the large language model is doing is that it's continuously predicting the next word. So if we start from the inner box over here, what's actually happening is the large language model is getting your prompt, which is your input message, and the output that it's created so far to act as an input by which it's predicting what the next word should be. So basically, like we saw before, we had binge, and then the next word was drinking. That's what it predicted. But basically the idea is that if binge is the output that the model has created so far, the model isn't just taking that into consideration. What it's actually doing is it's taking your prompt, which is your input message, plus whatever output it's created so far into consideration before it predicts the next word. So your prompt, which is the input message, plus the output created so far is together being used as an input to predict what the next word is going to be. And so based off your input prompt and the first word, which was binge, it's predicting that the next word is drinking. And then what happens is it grabs the prompt plus that output, plus the word it just predicted, grabs and now uses all of these as the new input to then predict the next word. And then once it predicts the next word, it grabs that next word plus the previous word it predicted, plus all the outputs so far, plus the prompt. So everything in terms of your inputs and the model's outputs so far as the new input to then predict what the next word is. And it basically just continuously does this until eventually it finishes, and that's the response the model gives you. So the idea is, it's not just the output that the model's created so far that's deciding what the next word's going to be. It's actually the combination of your prompt or your input message plus whatever output the model's created so far. And so generally the idea is that your input message or your prompt directly affects exactly what you get back from the model, because it's affecting the probabilities, the probability distribution that's determining what word is coming next. And so with this image, what I want to convey to you guys is that the prompt is actually really important in determining what the output is. And if you literally just add one additional word inside the prompt, that is going to change the prediction of this word and this word and this word and so on and so forth, because it's being used to make that prediction. And so literally every word inside your prompt counts. And that's why it's really important to invest a lot of time to learn how to write the perfect prompt so you can get the perfect outputs from the large language model.